Hey guys, Mike here. So today's cult classic review is 2001's The Royal Tenenbaums, starring Gene Hackman as Royal Tenenbaum. In The Royal Tenenbaums, an eccentric family meets under the same roof for the first time in years, all for different varying reasons. And so we have The Royal Tenenbaums. So guys, this is a movie in this series before watching and reviewing it today. I had not seen it before, nor had I ever heard of this one. And I didn't really know all that much about it either. Didn't know who directed it, didn't know who wrote it, didn't really know what it was about. Before starting the film, I looked at the poster and saw that Ben Stiller was in it. Didn't really look at anything else, just saw that he was in it. And naturally I thought, well, this is going to be a comedy then. Let's see what it has to offer. So, what did I think of The Royal Tenenbaums? Well, I gotta say, I love how this movie starts off. It does a brilliant job of telling you who the main players are. Not only who they are, what their motivations are, how they all interact with one another, and how they all fit into this story. And then when we jump to years later, when we see them all as adults, at first, I did find it a bit hard to remember who everyone was. Some of them it was pretty obvious because, you know, they hadn't changed their looks in, like, years. They still, like, wore the same tennis clothes or whatever. But some of the others, it did take me a second to figure out, alright, you're that person, great. But as soon as I figured that out, there was no identity crisis for any of these characters. Because even though these are quite eccentric characters, not exactly eccentric in the way of just waving their arms around constantly and just running around, you know, being all crazy. More eccentric with just their lifestyle and the unconformist way in which they actually act. Some of them are a bit bland and emotionless, but at the same time, they let their eccentricness actually rise above that. So when I say eccentric, I mean they're just not exactly the most normal of characters. Like I said at the start, I didn't know who directed this film, but I was about 10-15 minutes in and I looked at it and I was just like, you know what, this feels a lot like a Wes Anderson movie. I looked it up and I found out that it was Wes Anderson who directed and wrote this one. And it's that thing that people always say, you know when you're watching a Wes Anderson movie. Pretty much from the writing, the characters, the cinematography, the colour palette, everything just screams Wes Anderson. And I love how he has such a unique style. Now, I haven't seen many Wes Anderson movies. Well, I think I've only actually seen one Wes Anderson movie before this one, and that was Isle of Dogs. And I remember not exactly thinking much of that film. Not that it was bad in any kind of way, it's just it didn't really grab me all that much. I imagine probably upon a second viewing I might think a lot more of it. But on my first watch, it wasn't really all that for me. And I thought that this movie was gonna kind of follow the same suit. Because like I said, when I started this one off, I thought this was gonna be a comedy because I saw that Ben Stiller was in it. And for the longest time, this movie didn't really have me in hysterics. It was more just the odd chuckle here and there. But honestly, when I started watching this movie as a full-blown comedy and just kind of experienced it more as a drama, that's when I enjoyed this movie a lot more. Because though The Royal Tenenbaums isn't unfunny, it is the drama that definitely holds it up to its highest level. And the drama in The Royal Tenenbaums was just excellent. I loved the family dynamic that they all had together, how they interacted with one another, the history they all had with each other, and how they interact now after being apart for so many years. Honestly, I don't think I could probably pick out a favourite performance because I think everyone was just equally good in this film. Though if I did have to probably pick two characters who I found the most interesting, it would probably be Gene Hackman and Ben Stiller's characters, and more the relationship that they had with one another. Because at the start, Gene Hackman's character is just not a good person. Though he is an entertaining character, he is just pretty much a terrible person. And he only really wants to seem to connect with his family just because they have money, and he really doesn't. He's kind of broke at this point. And it's just the way he manipulates his family's emotions to kind of get what he wants was just despicable. And it's through connecting with his family again that he decides he wants to do better. Granted, he did have to be forced into that mindset, but still, it was great character development nonetheless. And Ben Stiller's character I found really engaging as well, because he and his two boys suffered a great tragedy. And you don't have to be a psychiatrist to know that this character is going to have a nervous breakdown. He's pretty much afraid of his boys doing anything dangerous or reckless. And though I didn't agree with everything that Gene Hackman's character did with his grandchildren, I did think that, you know, it was something that these characters needed to go through. And just the scene towards the end with Gene Hackman and Ben Stiller's character was just brilliant. After kind of temporarily setting aside their differences, they have an honest-to-God, heart-to-heart conversation. Well, it wasn't so much of a conversation, it's more like a sentence exchange between one another. But it's the few words they shared with one another that really made this relationship so great. Just how Ben Stiller's character kind of finally opened up and told his dad how he's actually feeling at this time. And how Gene Hackman, his dad, didn't really need to say anything, he was just there for him, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. Another thing I quite liked in The Royal Tenenbaums was the chapter transitions, because at the start of the film they show that this whole movie is based in a book, and every so often they'll show that a chapter has changed. They'll have the chapter title and then they'll have a little bit of text telling you what's going to happen in the scene. Such as something like, we see a hotel, Royal walks in from left, and then that happens. I thought, you know, that was quite funny. And I just love seeing little scenes like that. So guys, would I consider the Royal Tenenbaums a personal cult classic, and would I recommend that you guys should see it? You can easily see why this movie, and pretty much all of Wes Anderson's movies, have such an amazing cult following. And it's watching a film like this which actually makes me want to explore some more of Wes Anderson's movies, and actually probably rewatch the one I already watched. Though this film does label itself as a comedy, it's definitely not its strongest point, not unfunny, just not exactly insanely hilarious either. The drama, on the other hand, the absolute icing on the cake, the best part of this film. The characters are great, the story was great, I just really liked this film, and I can see why so many people would call this one a personal cult classic. It's just, I wouldn't consider it a personal cult classic. This is another case of a movie that is really good, but even though I really liked it and can't really find many faults of it, it just didn't really have that personal cult classic feel to me. Not because of any lack of quality, it's just, it didn't really have that feel for me. But as for whether or not you guys should see it, honestly, I would still definitely recommend that you should check this one out. If you're kind of a bit hesitant to watch a Wes Anderson movie because you don't really like the way it feels or looks, honestly, I would say this movie is the perfect start for you. Because though the characters are eccentric and this kind of world that Wes Anderson creates isn't exactly the most grounded of realities, I would say that it is engaging enough and realistic enough to kind of get you invested in the worlds that he creates. I would say just don't go in thinking you're going to watch a full-blown comedy. Just experience it more as a drama and you'll have a better time watching this one. Okay guys, that's my cult classic review of the Royal Tenenbaums. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Whatever you think, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, I've been Michael. See ya!